everybody, this is the Vikstrand. So, 2018 and A Quiet Place came out. I wasn't too interested in the whole thing because I had been too bummed out by a bunch of really bad Blumhouse jump scare fest, which contained a lot of bullshit, a lot of bad acting and a lot of lame bullshit. So I skipped that one out. But when I saw it, I discovered that not only was it one of the greatest horror movies that came out the past 15 years, but it's also so good it almost breaks the mold of what a horror film should be. And it was so good it actually ceased to be an actual horror movie and more became a psychological thriller. When I heard that they were going to do a new one, I said to myself, no, please don't do that. I like the concept of one story, one movie. But when I finished watching this one, I said to myself, well, now we're gonna have to make a part 3 of this one because this one was such a good sequel that now the only way that we can have a satisfying conclusion to the entire story is having a third chapter. So I'm now all for a third installment of A Quiet Place franchise. If they don't do it, I'm going to be really mad. Either, having the first one being the ending point of the whole story or stretch it out to a third movie. Otherwise, I'm going to be really annoyed by the whole thing. But let's find out what's good and what's bad about one of my favorite modern horror movies of all time. This is A Quiet Place Part 2. So Emily Blunt and her 2 surviving children has now left the farm after the events of the first movie. They're also having, the baby, which was the only thing about the first movie I didn't like. We'll get to the baby thing in a while. But they have heard that there might be other survivors out there in the world, and they're following this signal which leads them to this abandoned industrial plant where they meet up Cillian Murphy. Now, Cillian Murphy used to know Lee back in the days, but now he's kind of bummed out. Well, why is he bummed out? Maybe it's because of, the death of his wife and his sons and stuff like that. Well, if that doesn't bum you out, I don't know what. The thing is, he's not really living, he's just, not dying in this place. He doesn't really want to leave this place because it is his safe haven after all. But then they hear a signal, or rather a song, coming from an island, and they think they might, be secure there. Maybe they will be, find shelter there, and maybe, this is the way to, rebuild humanity and stuff like that. But he doesn't want to go there, and he argues that maybe mankind does not need to be, rescued because what has this, alien invasion done to people? What have we become after, all these horrible things that happened to us? What have we become as people and stuff like that? But they will then be separated, Cillian Murphy and the daughter, and Emily Blunt and her slightly wounded son and the baby is sort of split up and trying to reunite with each other and trying to survive and trying to find the island and maybe find answers to what this is and is there shelter to be had on this island and things like that. The thing is with A Quiet Place Part 2, it is that there are almost no dead spaces in this one. Every minute is just one people being in peril or being in danger or being chased by something. We don't stop, we don't quit, we work all day, and this is what we get. An ultra intense, very well directed, very well acted with fantastic cinematography, and above all, very tense horror movie that almost extends into more of a sci-fi thriller, a post-apocalyptic survivalistic movie at this point. Should you see this movie if you haven't seen the original one? You can see it, but everything will make more sense if you see first the original movie and then this thing. Now let's talk for a second about the baby, because one of these very few things I didn't like about the original movie was the fact that Emily Blunt and her husband is, having a baby. She was pregnant in the first movie, and I felt when I saw that is the dumbest thing you can do. You're having an alien invasion where you're safe as long as you don't make a sound, and you're going to bring a baby into this world. which you cannot control in any way. I know that you want to replace the child that dies and stuff like that, but do that later. Bring a baby into a world like this, like hiring the Human Torch into a popcorn factory and stuff like that. It will not end well. Now, they're trying to work around it as best as they could, but it was very distracting then, and it hasn't gone, less distracting now. But apart from that, every second of this movie is absolutely great. Every second of this movie is fantastically directed, excellently acted, and suspenseful to the bones. There are moments in this movie that just makes you, Jesus Christ. And the rest of it is quite excellent. If I had one more complaint about this movie, is the fact that I think that the music could have been toned down a little bit, and they also introduces a little thing in this movie that made me go a little bit, come again? Because when you start to think about the implications of what this thing means, it changes not only the world, it not only changes, the world that you're trying to build here and all the new characters and stuff like that. It goes into more of a thing that you're sitting there in your sofa or your couch or your leaning chair and anything like that, and you're looking at this movie and you're thinking to yourself, well, if that thing works, why doesn't so and so do such and such? It's a little bit distracting, but you're gonna have to work with it or you will not enjoy this movie. They do introduce a new bunch of characters and they do try to build a world, and I applaud them for that, because they need to expand this movie in order to make the entire concept of this movie fresh. Now, is it as good as the first one? The short answer is no. They do try new things and they do try to expand this thing, and it works most of the time. It isn't perfect, but I think it works as good as it could have at this point. And also, I should probably mention this, that a part of this movie does also take place in, the days when the aliens arrived. And I like that, to show how this world, came apart and how fast everything went from, normal to absolute insanity. And they needed that to show this movie to, make it work. Emily Blunt is fantastic in this movie. Cillian Murphy has never done a bad performance as I can recall, and this won't be one of them. If you are as tired as me as bad torture porns or bad supernatural horror movies, or late January released Blumhouse pictures with people you have no idea who they are, you will have an absolute blast with this movie, because this is how you make a horror movie. You make it so good that you forget that it is a horror movie and you just want to enjoy the story and see where the characters are taking you, because they could have finished this movie 2, 3, maybe even 4 times, and you would say, yeah, that was a fair point of stopping this movie, but they just keep going and going and going and building and building and building to an absolute excellent crescendo, in which I said to myself, I need a third installment, as I said at the beginning. So make it happen, and I'm really looking forward to a third movie, or being really, really annoyed by the fact that we won't get a third installment. But anyway, I think this movie is excellent, and I give it my full-throated endorsement. And that's a rare thing for me to say about a modern horror movie. It's not quite as good as the first one. I give A Quiet Place Part 2 88 points. It is a fantastic, tense and intense horror movie. Could it have been better? Yes. Should A Quiet Place even have had a sequel? Debatable, but in the same way as Avatar: The Way of Water, they actually made me want more movies out of this one, so good job everybody. I think this movie is quite excellent, an absolutely astonishing sequel to a fantastic movie. So I'll see you next time for So and So reviewing, such and such. Thank you for watching. Thank you very much.